All right, so get this AI learning from AI. Sounds like we're jumping into some sci-fi flick, right? But hold on, because it's called synthetic data, and let me tell you, it's causing a stir. The AI world, you see, it's got this massive appetite for data and synthetic data. Well, it might just be the all-you-can-eat buffet it's been craving.
Now, that's what I call a spot-on analogy. To really get why synthetic data's got everyone buzzing, we got to rewind a bit. Why is data the heart and soul of AI in the first place?
It's kind of like that saying, you are what you eat, but for AI, it's more like you are what you learn on.
Bingo. Picture this. You're trying to teach an AI to recognize something complex, like, say, a cat jamming on a piano, right?
Yeah.
You need to bombard it with tons of images and videos, all tagged correctly to show it what a cat playing piano actually looks like. Data, my friend, it's the foundation of AI knowledge.
So data is like AI's instruction manual. And the bigger and more diverse that manual is, the smarter the AI gets. But I bet getting all that real-world data, especially for something as specific as a piano-playing cat, that's got to be a real pain. And that's where synthetic data swoops in to save the day.
You got it. Think of synthetic data like building a virtual soundstage, where you can direct that whole cat on the piano act in countless ways.
Yeah.
No real-world headaches, just pure creative freedom. It's about making data that's like a mirror image of real data, but with you holding the remote control.
So it's like having a custom-built boot camp for your AI. Give me an example of how this actually works in the real world.
All right, imagine you're building a self-driving car, right? To make sure it's a smooth operator out there, ideally, you'd train its AI on every imaginable traffic scenario. Pedestrians crossing at all angles, cyclists zipping through, cars making those "did they really just do that" moves. Now try collecting that much real-world data talk about time-consuming, expensive, and let's not forget the potential fender benders.
Oh man, can you imagine the insurance premiums for a fleet of driverless cars learning as they go? Through trial and error and rush hour, talk about a budget buster.
Tell me about it. But with synthetic data, you can basically build those scenarios in a virtual world and hit replay 1,000 times with different twists and turns. You're testing the AI's reactions to way more situations than you could ever find on real roads.
So instead of chasing after pigeons and jaywalking squirrels on actual streets, you're basically building a digital playground where your AI can practice its driving skills without the real-world fender benders. That's pretty darn clever. But this isn't just some far-off futuristic fantasy, right? Are companies actually using synthetic data right now?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking big leagues here. Google, Microsoft, they're pouring resources into synthetic data like there's no tomorrow. Even Meta, and they've got more real-world user data than you can shake a stick at. They use synthetic data to train their video generator. This whole approach, it lets them develop cutting-edge tech without bumping into those ethical speed bumps or logistical nightmares that come with using real user data.
Sounds like synthetic data is quickly becoming the VIP in the AI world. In fact, I read somewhere that a mind-blowing 60% of data used for AI and analytics could be synthetic by next year. That's a prediction that'll make your head spin. What's fueling this synthetic data craze? Is it all about speed and cost, or are there other things in the mix?
Efficiency is definitely a big part of it. I mean, let's be real. Synthetic data is faster and cheaper to create than rounding up and labeling real-world data. But there's more to it than that. Synthetic data also sidesteps some of those ethical and logistical headaches we keep bumping into with real-world data, especially in fields like healthcare, where privacy is king.
Makes sense. But before we get too caught up in all the synthetic hype, gotta ask, are there any downsides to using this seemingly magical data? It almost sounds too good to be true.
You hit the nail on the head there. Synthetic data, it's a game changer, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Remember, we're trying to create data that's like looking in a mirror, reflecting the real world perfectly. But mess up that reflection and things can go south pretty quickly.
So kind of like trying to put lipstick on a pig. You can dress it up, but it's still a pig, right? You can try to fancy up bad data with algorithms and whatnot, but you're going to end up with results that are about as reliable as a weather forecast in a hurricane.
Now you're preaching. One of the biggest hurdles with synthetic data is making sure it's true to life. Like, if the data we use to train the AI making the synthetic data is incomplete or a little wonky, those quirks, well, they're going to show up in the synthetic data, bigger and bolder than ever.
It's like making a copy of a copy. Every time you duplicate, things get a little blurry, a little distorted, And I can only imagine what happens when we're talking about AI making life-altering decisions based on that blurry copy.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine training an AI to be a doctor's right-hand man, helping diagnose diseases, right? If a synthetic data it learned from is skewed, like say it doesn't include enough information about certain groups of people or certain conditions, well, that AI might miss the mark completely for those folks.
Talk about a real-world wake-up call. It really highlights how crucial it is to start with a rock-solid foundation. If the synthetic data itself is shaky, any AI learning from it is going to inherit those flaws, maybe even amplify them along the way.
Exactly. And that brings us to another curveball, this thing called model collapse. Relying too heavily on synthetic data, especially if we're not checking it against the real world, it's like coddling an AI, making it think the world's perfect and predictable.
It's like raising a kid in a bubble, protecting them from all the messy realities of life. Then, one day, that bubble bursts and they're totally unprepared for the real deal.
Now, that's what I'm talking about. AI is the same way. Feed it too much synthetic data, and it might struggle to connect the dots when it encounters the chaos of the real world.
So it's all about finding that balance, right? Tapping into the speed and flexibility of synthetic data without losing sight of the real world and all its quirks.
You nailed it. Yeah. And that's where we humans, we're still the MVPs. We need folks who can bridge that gap between the synthetic and the real, always keeping an eye on these AI systems, making sure they're reliable, trustworthy, and playing by our rules.
It's like we're sailing into uncharted territory, and we need an experienced captain at the helm, someone who can read the maps, adjust the sails, and steer clear of those hidden reefs. We can't just set sail and hope for the best.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And speaking of uncharted waters, one of the most fascinating and potentially treacherous areas where synthetic data is making waves is in those AI hallucinations. Ever heard of them?
Oh yeah, those AI hallucinations. Sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi thriller, like those AI systems are having visions or something.
It's a catchy phrase, that's for sure. And while it's not as dramatic as Hollywood might make it seem, it does point to a real head-scratcher in the AI world. In a nutshell, an AI hallucination. It's when an AI system spits out something totally off base, factually wrong, makes no sense. But here's the kicker. It says it with such confidence, you almost believe it.
So it's like the AI is dreaming up scenarios or spinning tales that have nothing to do with reality. And here I thought I was the one prone to flights of fancy.
Hey, we've all been there. But on a serious note, these hallucinations, they can pop up for a whole bunch of reasons. Biases in the data it's learned from, limitations in how well it understands the world, you name it. And here's where synthetic data comes back into play. If we train an AI on synthetic data that's got some cracks in its foundation, well, those cracks can lead to hallucinations, especially when the AI tries to go off script beyond what it's been trained on.
Kind of reminds me of that game Telephone. You start with one message, pass it along, and by the time it gets to the end of the line, it's a whole different story. Except in this case, it's not just a funny misunderstanding. It could have real consequences if the AI is making decisions based on those hallucinations.
100%. That's why researchers, they're working overtime trying to figure out how to spot and fix these AI hallucinations, especially as these AI systems get more complex and start playing bigger roles in our lives. And one of the most promising strategies is...
So it's like we're giving these AI systems a reality check, making sure they haven't wandered too far off the map.
You got it. One way we're doing that is by mixing in some real-world data, even if it's just a pinch, to keep things grounded. Think of it like adding a splash of cold water to a too-hot bath.
It's all about finding that sweet spot, right? Getting the benefits of synthetic data, the speed, the flexibility, but without losing that connection to the real world.
Exactly. And that's where we humans, we're still calling the shots. We need experts, folks who can straddle that line between the synthetic and the real, always tweaking and adjusting these AI systems to make sure they're on the right track.
It's a good reminder that even though AI is getting smarter by the minute, we're still the ones holding the reins, guiding these technologies towards a future that works for everyone. It's a huge responsibility, but man, what an exciting time to be a part of it all.
Couldn't agree more. It's like we're standing on the edge of something brand new, something big. AI could change everything. Healthcare, transportation, how we learn the possibilities are endless. But as all that potential, we got to make sure we're using these tools the right way, ethically, for the greater good.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who are itching to dive even deeper into this whole world of synthetic data and the future of AI, do yourself a favor and check out Mitch Jackson's LinkedIn newsletter. He's got a knack for breaking down these complex topics, and he always keeps it real, talking about the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Can't recommend it enough. If you want to stay ahead of the game in this ever-changing world of tech, Rich is your guy.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the wild world of synthetic data. We've talked about its potential, its quirks, and why we gotta be careful even when things seem too good to be true. Synthetic data, it's not a magic bullet, but if we use it wisely, it's got the power to change the world as we know it. Until next time, stay curious, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.